What I'm interested in is to see if you are going to maintain the plan that we discussed last time we spoke, or because the market is changing, your thinking's changing.
Look, no, we'll stick to our knitting here very much. Now, we sort of, whilst we're sort of keen observers of what's going on in the market. Our main job here is to advance our project and deliver fish for our shareholders that way. So we'll stick to our knitting there. We've got to find the right path to move the project forward. I think, ideally come summer, we'll have an enlarged, essentially a resource delineation drilling program that we'll be working on, albeit we've still got a lot of exploration work to do there because we haven't found the boundaries of the deposit as it stands yet. So we've got to do that, and we've got some fantastic exploration targets. Some of our exploration drilling out to the east of the deposit over the winter, hit some very interesting elevated radioactivity and alteration. So our chances of discovery out there are very, very good as well. And if you want to touch on that question of size of the prize, cost of the test, and chance of success,
I do.
Not a bad time to do it. But
yeah, no, go on. Let's say the size of the prize, the cost of the test, and the chance of success. What are you talking about?
Look, it's one of my favourite catchphrases that your viewers may not know this, but I spent 8.5 years with Rio Tinto Exploration in various different roles around the world. And there was the head of exploration when I joined Rio was a gentleman called David Klingner. And he really transformed the exploration business at Rio Tinto, made it much more sort of business focused, commercially focused, with still a massive, very strong technical overprint. But he reduced budgets and transformed that business such that, and people perhaps don't realise this, but NextGen has consistently discovered a tier one asset every year for the past 20 years. And they're things that people don't know about. People think that that juniors discover more deposits than the majors. Well, it's not entirely true. Rio's been very successful. And part of his thesis, or, what he drummed into us, was that you must focus on the size of the prize, cost of the test, and chance of success when it comes to looking at, ranking and prioritising and reviewing exploration projects. So size of the prize, if you're going to look for world-class deposits, or what you should be looking for are world-class deposits, tier one type projects, because big ones, small ones at the end of the day take as much time and effort as big ones and don't give you the return. So you've got to go after projects that are big. And that's one of the reasons that Rio got out of gold. Gold, very hard to find a project of material size in the gold space. It's got to be more than 10 million ounces, and there aren't many of those out there. So size of the price, cost of the test, it's got to be worth you doing the work to go and test those targets and having access. This is why the Athabasca Basin, as an example, is a fantastic place, particularly the eastern Athabasca where we are. We don't want to be drilling kilometre deep holes. We're very happy drilling 300-metre deep holes to hit hurricane. And we're surrounded by fantastic infrastructure there. You've got roads, you've got power, you've got people, ready access to drill rigs. So the cost of testing our targets out there is relatively modest to, say, testing things in the Andes or in deeper parts of the basin. So that's important. And then chance of success is simply probability of intersecting or making a discovery of the size that you want to, and so what that translates to is going to places where there are known deposits, where you know that you have a strong probability of testing of making an economic intercept. And again, on all of those fronts, the Athabasca Basin ticks those boxes. The size of the prize is right. We're in and around some of the world's big mines. Of course, one of our properties, Thorburn Lake, is only 6 kilometres away from and a long strike of the massive Cigar Lake mine. So we know the deposits are big enough. cost of the test in the Athabasca Basin, very, very modest because of where we are and the fact that we're not drilling very deep holes. And then chance of success, well, we know that the Athabasca Basin is incredibly well endowed with high-grade mineralisation, so it ticks that box. So that's how we rank and prioritise our targets globally and then locally as well.
Okay, that's all lovely, but there are lots of companies who have found good assets and they're sitting, they would tick all those boxes, who I don't know today if they're going to be able to get financed, and if they are, how expensive that financing is going to be. So I'm going to look at, and so what I want to get to here, and I said it right at the beginning, is what are you going to do to be able to get into production or slot into the marketplace? So if you're sitting with $1 billion plus capex requirement, there's very few ways to go about getting that, okay? But if you're going to need a couple of $100 million, you've got a lot more options available to you. So I'm interested in what your plan is. I know your exploration, it's early days, okay? You've got a lot more to do, but at some point you stop drilling, you go, we've got enough now to get this thing going, okay? We've got a big enough resource to get this thing financed and get the thing going. Or do you just keep drilling and drilling and drilling? In the end, you've got yourself a $1 billion capex program to try and finance. Where do you fit in the marketplace if that is the case? What does your infrastructure need to look like? So I'm interested in what you're going to do to commercialize this. And more importantly, for your shareholders, you're going to make the money. Show them how they're going to be able to make money. So what's your answer to that? What's the plan?
Well, if we've got a deposit that's big enough that we can just keep drilling it out, well, that's a wonderful problem to have, of course. And Lee Courier there, our chairman and CEO of NextGen, has had that challenge. Arrow's turned out to be an absolute giant project, a giant deposit that and a big project. But that project, the nature of his deposit there at Arrow, or our deposit, I should say, is that it will support it will be the biggest uranium mine in the world, and yet is only going to cost $1 billion to build. And I think the financing of that will come very readily, particularly when you look at the cash flow of that project. Lee really only has to forward sell a year's worth of production, and there's the $1 billion that he needs to build the project. So he's uniquely positioned. I'd love to think that we'd get to that point.
I'd love to think we can interview him soon. So if you want to put in a good word, please do.
Sure.
He can tell us himself.
No, he's a great friend and business partner of mine. So I'll absolutely put in a good word for him.
I'll be nice.
Good. Well, he's got it's such a wonderful story. There's I'm sure he'd love to share it.
Okay, but back to you.
So look,
back to you. What are you going to do?
Yeah, back to Hurricane. So look, I think we're probably, we're starting to close the deposit off along strike. Of course, on the western part of our project, we're running up against the property boundary, so that's a challenge for us. But we haven't closed off any of those sections, and if people look at our website there, IsoEnergy.ca, you can see our sections in our presentation and most recent news release. We've got some massive high-grade intercepts there. There's one there that we announced 2 days ago at hole 52, 7.5 metres at 23% U3O8. No drill hole around that at all. So we've got to close that off. So look, I think, Matt, we're probably another 1 to 2 drill campaigns away from knowing the full extent of the deposit and what we might be working with. And then we'll make, it's too early to say what our path to development on a project like this is. We don't even have a resource. So you've got to do all of that groundwork first, but we'll get that done. And then how do we look at it? What do we do? Well, in terms of developing a project, now this is all, you've got to caveat this. This is laden with forward-looking statements. But there are a couple of fundamental things that we're looking at. Firstly, we're not under a body of water. We're relatively shallow. We're very close to roads, power, grid power, and great infrastructure for mining. Crucially, we're only 40 kilometres away from Orano's McLean Lake Mill. And so you can make some assumptions about what we would try to do if we came to developing this project around toll milling and those sorts of approaches. And certainly we know that mill It's a 24 million pound per annum production capacity that they have there. They are producing, 3 weeks ago, they were producing 18 million pounds per annum. That was their run rate. Today, of course, it's shut down and they're not producing anything. And then, come 2025, depending on what happens with Cigar Lake, that mill could be out of feed almost completely. So we're uniquely positioned to provide product there. And then the other thing you should look at, we're looking at, is what's the most economic route to extraction of this type of ore. Of course, you've seen Cameco's, freeze wall mining technology, relatively high capex and opex to develop a project like that. In recent years, of course, we've seen a couple of technologies come along that allow you to reduce your capital budget and your operating costs dramatically. Of course, we've seen Denison's exceptionally good work on conceptualising and looking at in situ leaching of high-grade deposits. We've been so impressed by that, in fact, that Peter Longo, who was their COO, who conceptualised that work, we've actually brought him onto the team as a consultant to help us look at that approach as well. So we're starting to put in place those building blocks to look at how we might develop this project. And then, of course, the other thing is Orano has their Sabre borehole extraction proprietary technology that they've worked on, and we think that Hurricane could be amenable to that approach, and that's a very low cost approach to mining as well. So we're looking at all of those things. I think, suffice to say, when it comes to building a mine and a project, we wouldn't expect that we might have to build a mill out in the east, which is one of the great things about operating in the eastern Athabasca.